Um, Good morning or good afternoon, girls. I am Miss Rimia Lingdo, and today I will be taking you the topics related to this plant group, which is called as the Bryophyta or the Bryophytes. Okay, and in under this topic, we have to study on the classification of bryophytes. We will be studying on classification, structure, their characteristics. So let me give you a general overview of what we are going to study in this topic. So mainly bryophytes are plants that you have encountered every time, especially in this season now. You will see bryophytes in many uh, walls and on surfaces. These bryophytes are nothing but the mosses. Okay, so moss is one of the examples of a bryophyte, a moss. Okay, so the moss that you see is actually um, found mostly in aquatic or habitats which require a lot of water. Okay, so uh, let me just give you a general overview before we start. Okay, um, if you remember or if you are familiar, I want to explain to you that in evolutionary point of view, there are four groups of plants. The first group of plant is we know is the algae. Algae are the first to appear, and these algae are mainly aquatic plants. Okay, so when these plants, which were predominantly living in the oceans, they tried to, after years of evolution, they tried to dominate the land because they were originally from the ocean. So the 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 new plant group which emerged was the bryophytes. Okay, so we are studying now the bryophytes. After the bryophytes, they will evolve further into the third plant group, which is called as the pteridophytes. The pteridophytes. Now the pteridophytes are nothing but the ferns that you see. So ferns are found, although they need moisture, but they are found in the land. Okay, and then the last group are the gymnosperms and the angiosperms. So these gymnosperms, I can say in simpler terms, gymnosperms are the trees, angiosperms are the flowers. Okay, so that is the overview. So if I tell you what are bryophytes, bryophytes are the group of plants which are intermediate between the algae and the pteridophytes. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you now um, what is the meaning of the word bryophyte. The bryophyte name means, in Greek, bryo means moss and phytes is plant. So they are nothing but moss plants. So they have evolved from the algae, as I have shown you. And one problem with the algae is that algae, when they try to, if you put algae in land, they will slowly die because there's less of water. So bryophytes are plants that are kind of like the way frogs are, amphibious. So even bryophytes are called as plant amphibians. Plant amphibians because they can also survive in water, they can also survive on land. Okay, so they have developed some protective structures in order to enable them to survive the land. Okay, so we're going to study now the different um, groups of bryophytes. So I will just show you here. There are mainly three divisions of bryophytes. You have the hornworts, the liverworts, and the mosses. Okay, so we don't have not only just mosses, we have these other group of bryophytes called as liverworts, and the other group is called as the hornworts. But for the sake of in the botany point of view, we cannot just call them by these common names. We also have their scientific names also. So I will show you the scientific names in the other slides. Let me just explain to you first that there are two general phases that you can find in the life of a bryophyte. Okay, so in a bryophyte you have a phase which we call as the gametophytic phase. What is the gametophytic phase? The gametophytic phase is also the haploid phase. When you say haploid, it means that they have n number of chromosomes, or they have half the number of chromosomes in their cells. So usually the stage where there are haploid number of cells is when there are gametes. Okay, gametes meaning the sperm and the egg stage. Okay, what about the sporophytic phase? The sporophytic phase is the diploid phase, which means there are twice the number of chromosomes as compared to the haploid phase. So they will ask you which phase is dominant in the life cycle of bryophyte. Okay, which phase is dominant? For human beings, if you look, our plant, oh sorry, we are not plants. For humans, our body is mainly dominated by the sporophytic phase if you consider humans. Okay, because each and every cell of our body is diploid, right? But only our sex organs, only the male and female sex cells are gametophytic in their composition. So in other words, if you talk about humans, the dominant phase in humans will be the sporophytic phase. But in plants, if we talk about bryophytes, the dominant phase, please remember, the dominant phase in bryophytes is the gametophytic phase. Okay, so all the cells of the plant body have haploid number of chromosomes. Okay, so we're going to talk about the general characteristics of bryophytes. One of the first characteristics, as I had mentioned, is that both the gametophytic and the sporophytic phase are present. I have already explained what is gametophytic, and I have already explained what is sporophytic. Gametophytic means N or haploid, sporophytic means they have diploid condition. The second characteristic is that the dominant phase is gametophytic phase. When we say that the dominant phase is the gametophytic phase, it means that the main plant body is having n number of chromosomes. Now, there are three main divisions that we find in bryophytes. The three main divisions are, number one is liverworts or Hepaticopsida. Okay, so if I talk about liverworts, the word liverworts comes from the word liver. When you look at the liverworts, how do they look like? They look like liver. Their shape looks like the shape of a human liver. Okay, like this. So in scientific term, we also call the liver as in this word hepa. If you have studied in class 12, hepatic veins, they are liver veins coming from the liver. So this division is also called as Hepaticopsida. Okay, then we have the second division, which is called as the hornworts. The hornworts, they have certain horn-like apparatus, or they have certain they have certain structures which protrude or stand up just like horns. So the other scientific name of hornworts is Anthoceratopsida. The third division of bryophytes is the common one, which we know as moss, but in scientific terms it is called as Bryopsida. So please remember, girls, these very important names which you will be always asked in your exams, and I want you to be able to identify each and every one of these divisions very carefully, because they are important. Okay, you have to remember their names clearly. So let us talk about the structure of the liverworts. How do they look like? Basically, in bryophytes, there are two different structures which you can find. In liverworts, you find that their structure is looking more like a flat surface. If you look at this picture, here you have it looks like a leaf, but it's a flat plant body structure. Okay, so the entire plant body is flat. Another name for flat structure is also called as thalloid. Okay, thalloid means flat, or more like the way you see a roti. So prostrate means that it lies close to the ground or flat on the ground. And when you look at the mosses, although they look very flat, but when you take a closer look at the moss, you will see that it is not a thallus structure or not flat, but it is erect. The structure of the plant body is erect. It is composed of, or it is standing straight. It is composed of stem and leaves. So basically in bryophytes, we have two different kind of structures. One is a flat lying structure, prostrate, which you can find in the liverworts, and one is a erect structure which you find in mosses. Now the fifth characteristic is that instead of roots, you will not find roots. Okay, girls, instead of roots, you will find that they have structures called as rhizoids. What are rhizoids? Rhizoids are nothing but the parts of the stem which have modified themselves into to form root-like functions. Okay, so this is the stem. Part of the stem will modify itself to form the rhizoids. The rhizoids act like roots. They can absorb water and minerals. They also act as anchorage for the plant. Another important characteristic is that only parenchyma cells are present. Okay, so inside the bryophyte, you will not find different types of cells. There's only one type of cell, which is the most simplest type of cell, and it is the parenchyma cell. They do not have xylem and phloem yet because they are not evolved yet. They are still trying to learn how to adapt to the terrestrial habitats. Okay, so they will not have very complex tissue. They will only have simple cells like the parenchyma cells. Okay, so then this we are going to study about their reproduction in very detail, but here is just a overview. Okay, I will just explain to you. Bryophytes, they can reproduce both vegetatively and both sexually. So if we talk about vegetative reproduction, there is no involvement of gametes and there is no involvement of there are no gametes involved. Instead, how do they reproduce vegetatively? Some parts of the, suppose this is the part of the bryophyte and it has died. So if older parts have died, then the new plant or the plant body will be generated from the older parts. Another type of vegetative reproduction is when, if you look at this diagram here, they have adventitious branches. These are branches which come out from the main plant body and they can give rise to new plants. And then we have these structures which are called as gamma. Okay, gamma cups. If you look at this picture here, you can see small cup-like structures on the surface of the bryophyte. This bryophyte is called as the Markansha. Okay, these cups, what happens when there is rain? As the rain falls on the surface of this plant, it will push away, or the cups, when they are loose, they will jump or they will be pushed or kicked out of the thallus. They will fly very high and then they will land on a new part of the ground and they will give rise to new plants. And then we have tubers. Tubers are, from this picture you can see, what happens is that sometimes it becomes very dry. And as you know, bryophytes, they need water, right? So sometimes it becomes very dry, so that the tubers, these bryophytes, they cannot survive. So what do? They, some part of the bryophyte will start to become swollen to form these structures called as tubers. Inside the tubers, they have all kinds of important compounds that will help them. What happens is that this entire plant will start to dry up and then they will die, but the tubers will remain. So what happens when there is a favorable condition? That means when there is rain. Okay, when it starts to rain, when it starts to become more favorable for the plant to grow, then the tubers will start to be active and they will give rise to the new plants. Okay, so these are the different types of vegetative reproduction that we can see in bryophytes. I will deal with the sexual reproduction in detail in the next class. Okay, so thank you for listening to this class, and If what are some of the questions that you can ask me in the group, you can ask me and text me in the group. Thank you.